Today, we're wrapping the tailgate of a Tundra. You've seen us do hoods, you've seen us do fenders. We're gonna do this tailgate, and one of the things everyone likes to watch is how we do recessed lettering. So we're gonna wrap this thing today. We're gonna go over it with you, and I hope you enjoy it. So what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna tack this end right here. And I always like to do videos where it's mostly by myself, if at all possible. That way, if you got somebody at home DIYing it, it's realistic for you to do on your own. So I just trim that back piece off, the vinyl back there. You can do it that way, you can just roll it, whatever you wanna do. We gave ourselves plenty just because on this tailgate, a lot of the new tailgates, they roll up and under and over. So if you try and be too short up here, you're gonna end up chewing up a bunch of vinyl as you go through the rolls. So you wanna make sure you give yourself plenty. Plus, just touching it with your hands, it can get greasy and gunky, so you just wanna make sure that this thing is set up to where you aren't putting your fingers all over the vinyl as much as possible. Then down here, we're just gonna give it a little tight. And this part, just like everything is out, everything else that we do, there's a glass out. Like I like to make sure that we're pretty well glassed out. And then right here is the camera and then the gate. So I'll show you guys that before I go too far. So we have camera and the gate. So one of the big things is making sure you know what you have before you start going too crazy. So right here, I'm just gonna give myself a little bit of relief around that. And it's just gonna allow this thing to drop down just a little bit more. Yep, there it is, perfect. Now we can pull out, there we go. Nice. That works. We're gonna feed through the center right here. It drops in and down. We don't have to worry too much because we don't have lettering. If we had lettering and all that kind of stuff, you wanna set whatever it is that has to remain straight first. Then you work your way out from there. That way you don't screw your lettering up. Because a lot of the time with these new curves and all this stuff, if you start feeding it and you're not paying attention to where your lettering is, by the time you get there, it's all screwed up. So this is where it's gonna drop down and in, and it comes over, rolls down. This goes up, right here is our handle, and then this is the ridge and it rolls back in there a little bit. So what we'll do is we're gonna start right here at where all my Tundra lettering is. And I'll probably use a heat gun, might be the quietest. So in one other thing, you'll see tailgate and how this piece was all cut. One of the things that we do ahead of time is you'll see we got Nico over there and he's cutting every panel for this prior to us doing it. So that the guys are tearing apart, he's prepping panels and I'm just starting right into wrapping. So everybody's busy and it just helps the process of this go a lot smoother. All right, so here's our A right here. And I can kind of see it, right? You can see the A, R, D. So you go through and the first thing you want to do is you can see how it wrinkles up a little bit. You want to give it heat so that it shrinks. Then when I go back over it, it doesn't get too wrinkly as we're going over it. I use a V-Cat, I like to use a newer one. I heat it, not right on it, but back. And I go continuous rolling with a good amount of pressure, and I'm only covering about 1/8 to 3/16 at most the entire time. Consistent heat, but I'm a solid foot away. So, in looking at this, the big thing is always gonna be the corners. So, here, here, these things are where you're gonna get air trapped the most. So I start on the far edge and I work all the way through and I don't pick up. So I continue all the way through, so I'm never raising it up. So as soon as it comes over this rib, I'm continuously pushing it and I have an airflow this way. That's why I'm attacking this first, not laying this and this, because what happens is I can have the ability to trap this air and it wants to shove somewhere. Right now I can let it go anywhere. A little shrink. And there she is. Now this stuff here, this is the new 2080, so you'll see if it gets a little warm, that's just the protective film on 2080. So now that this is all laid and looks good, I can work from here and work everything out without having to worry about trapping air in this area. So I'm gonna start here and I'm gonna go from here and I'll work my way up and I'll work my way down. That way on this bottom section, I can lift this up and feed that in there. It's not a horrible recess, but if you look at it, it's got a decent little recess in there. It's not something that I couldn't probably heat, but there's no reason to go too crazy and overstretch something when I have the availability to set it up to release it. So from here, I can just feed that into there, and here I can feed it in. And we'll start right here, making sure we're hitting here and the ridge first and a little bit over, so we don't trap any air right through here, which is always a rookie, I guess, mistake. I'm also using, we ordered these off a Yellow Tool. So you'll notice this is a 5-inch squeegee and not a 4-inch squeegee. I got bigger hands and I love the amount of coverage I get. I chose a blue one today because I get good flex, and on this, with all the recesses, I can put it in here and push and work it all the way down. Give it. So right there, I got a little bind, so we're just gonna take it, and you wanna pull it back, not just in that area. So we just have a little bit of bind, little excess vinyl. So if I just heat that up and I let it relax for a second, then you can come back over, and as I run my squeegee, I'm gonna run it towards the outside, and you'll see it has an angle going this way. When you slide your squeegee like this, you actually pull vinyl. So I'm actually moving excess vinyl. It doesn't just stay here, you actually pull with every swipe of your squeegee. So you can get rid of binding just by moving the vinyl through using your squeegee the proper way. Handle. Right behind us. So I'm gonna have this out and I'm just gonna work my way up and around that real quick. And then, I snagged up a little bit. And this is, I can show another way, I can show about 4 or 5 ways right off the bat. This is a quick and easy one that makes it so that we can feed it right into this channel here. So we fed it in there, and now since we're like this, we can take all of this and feed that right up into that channel without heating, without overdoing the vinyl at all. It's not that a wrap glove and whatnot couldn't get this in there, but it's pretty tight, and that's a lot of heat and stretch. Depending on your climates, you might end up with some popping, So we're just gonna take it back a little bit. And you'll notice I did everything consistent from side to side. So I didn't go ahead from one. I worked from here to here, here to here, here out. And then we came up. We did this, and we'll work this out and this. Then we'll finish the lower section, and then we're gonna move to the top. So we're never ahead or creating issues in our vinyl where you've got one area way too far ahead of the other, and it starts to create all the wrinkles and the V's and creates headaches, especially for new rappers. They get ahead of themselves in one area. You don't want to be ahead of yourself in comparison to another. So now we've worked this whole thing. Now we know we're good all along here. Same thing as we did down there. I want to get this bend first. I want to make sure no air gets trapped in there. So we'll come right across that bend, and then we can just work it right up. Yeah. Then we just want to do the same thing, one more little bend, and then tuck it in to the plastic on the tailgate. It is important to make sure you're always releasing. If you've taped it, whatever it is, you release it off of whatever's behind so that when you're tucking in, it's getting consistent coverage. If it's stuck here and I try and push in, I'm not as far in as I am here, and so you're gonna get a wavy line. Here we go. So now, it's all wrapped. I'm gonna go around all the edges and make sure all the edges are good. When we're trimming empty face like this, it's empty behind there. I always use a short blade and bump my actual knife, not the blade, up against the vehicle. That way it gives me just enough around the edge. And then the bottom. Take care of my corner first, nice and clean. We're gonna do the tailgate here, so all I'm gonna do is just kind of trim back. You can tape this off so that you're real careful and you aren't cutting the tailgate handle. A lot of time I'll just lift up, and that way I'm not cutting on the actual handle. And get rid of this. That'll work. I'm just gonna take this, pull it out a little bit. If you tape it, it'll help it keep from sticking, but this stuff is so porous that it doesn't stick real well to it. So I'm gonna give it some heat, let it relax. And then I'm gonna feed my corners first, just so it gets nice and tight. Come down here. Do the same thing. Now, the cap sheet's a little in my way, I don't like it. Just gonna pull that back. And we're gonna heat that, make sure that sinks in. There we go. Now, I'm going to sharp blade it. And before I go too much farther, I don't want to talk about this part. I don't like this part. All right. As I'm running the blade, I'm doing my best to run it right on the back side of this plastic. So without having to take the gate apart. Some of you out there don't want to, don't have the ability to. This gives you the ability to do what ultimately in the beginning wraps was all about. You know, it's wrapping a vehicle, not having to tear it all apart. And if you do it this way, you don't have to tear it all apart. And that's how you do a Toyota Tundra tailgate.